Hi, everybody. I'm Rogers Haley, the host of Rogers That, a podcast dedicated to selling without selling out. And today we have a hero. A hero has joined our show, someone who has defended and continues to defend our freedom as a soldier, as someone that had a calling in his heart and his gut, went out to serve our country, much like his family did prior. And because of people like our guest today, we are able to go and live a life of liberty and freedom in the greatest country in the world. This person is going to give us a different gift. He's going to give us the gift of perspective, grit, fortitude, faith, perseverance, love, kindness, everything. And we're going to learn a lot because what we're going to capture in this short time together is going to give us all a different reason to go on with our day with a smile on our face, holding our head high, because like our guest is going to show us today, no matter how hard you have it, you have the ability to push through. With all that being said, it's my pleasure to welcome Sergeant Johnnie Yellock II to the Rogers That podcast.
Thank you. Boy, you are Jimmy Fallon to Justin Timberlake. What a heck
Really?
of an elevator pitch.
It's my podcast in a box?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Very good. No, I appreciate it. It's an honor to be here. Honor to just have a chat with you, like we get to do. We've had a couple of collision points in life, you and I.
Yeah.
And I feel like every time, it matters. It's around something really impactful, obviously. And
Nothing more impactful than the Rogers That podcast.
No, and that's where I was going with that.
This, out of all the things that you've done, I realize it's all been a build-up to this.
I've made it.
So
I can now say that I'm accomplished.
Yeah, that's it. Congratulations. Let's take a quick dive, and people that aren't being able to watch this. Imagine Derek Jeter at 28 years old, more chiseled, with a custom blazer. That's what I'm staring at right now. But maybe get us, like, what got Johnnie Yellock to be Johnnie Yellock? Obviously, you have an incredible background, incredible story, not just from being a war hero and a mortgage maven. You've done a little bit of everything, most of things that I would not even consider. Anything with the word dive, he's done it. Skydive, scuba dive, deep dive.
I've been to a dive bar.
A dive bar? God, you're so diverse.
I could not have become Johnnie Yellock II without a Johnnie Yellock I. So obviously, my parents are a huge part of my life, even today, but definitely a part of the beginning of my life, you would say, But both of them served in the military. My dad did 27 years. My mom did 20 years in the Air Force. And so I got to grow up all over the world, a lot of different cultures, people, places. And I've been blessed to have my eyes open to just so many different perspectives growing up. And none more so impactful than the idea of service before self, and seeing that in my parents, the sacrifices that they made on a daily basis to, wake up at 4 a.m. and go onto the flight line and be gone all day, and my mom and dad having split shifts, working all night or then all day, and being there enough, and when they were, pouring so much of faith and goodness and love and kindness and affection.
Were you in DFW?
Into us. No, my sister was born in Germany. I was born in the Netherlands.
Wow.
I lived in Iceland for a little while, and I grew up mostly in San Antonio.
That's the natural progression from Germany to Iceland to the Netherlands to San Antonio.
Pretty common story.
Yeah, no, I've heard this so many different times. If you went from, slinging really nice flowers to selling, tourist trips, and then the Alamo.
Tulips at Kukenoff, and then, San Antonio.
Yeah.
Greenwater Riverwalk.
Yeah, I lived in San Antonio too. Where'd you go to high school?
Well, I started at Churchill.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
I went to Alamo Heights.
That makes sense.
Yeah, why?
It doesn't.
Because I'm a great athlete? Just kidding. Okay, so but get us to where you...
There's so much drama in
I was
San Antonio High School.
Agreed.
Sports.
I was there for 6 months. I didn't like it. San Antonio listeners, I'm sorry. In San Antonio?
In high school in San Antonio for 6 months.
Same.
Before moving here to Keller.
Same, not Keller, but I went to Highland Park here, and it was, anyway.
You came here in the middle of your first semester of high school?
I came here technically. Here's a fun fact, which has nothing to do with Johnnie Yellock II, but I'm going to share it. I was a second semester sophomore in San Antonio. On the drive up to Dallas, my parents, right before we got here, said, by the way, you're going to be a second semester freshman. So, yeah. And then maybe I'll interview myself one day on the podcast, but it was it was the best thing that ever happened to me. But I was a late bloomer. Was not a great student. I had ADHD and dyslexia before it was trendy. And so as we're pulling into Dallas, literally like, hey, by the way,
you're an innovator.
You're going to be a freshman again. I was like, really? And then I got a Nintendo 64 to wipe away my tears. And
I had a very similar story. I was doing exactly what I wanted to do in San Antonio. San Antonio is military USA, so there's nothing better than being an ROTC in San Antonio High School. And I was on the drill team, and I was progressing and loved every bit of it. Wanted to go to A&M and then join the military. And as we were driving up to Keller, ROTC programs were not at all the best schools in DFW at that time. They were at the schools that needed like correctional assistance.
I almost went there too, yeah.
And so Keller High School did not have an ROTC program, so I went back into band and played the tuba again, and did that for the next 4 years.
At Keller?
At Keller.
But so there was not ROTC.
No.
Okay.
But they had a good band.
But what got it? So you went from why did you not want to pursue being a professional tuba player?
I don't know. I feel like that question answers itself.
It's just too stressful of a career. Too
Later
much
in the story,
the
you'll
limelight.
find that playing tuba for 7 years did play an impact in my success in the military.
So what got you? In 2007, you decided to enlist, right? You have that calling. Yep. You have both your parents.
Graduated high school 2002, went to college, got an engineering degree, and I would love to say that the turning point for me joining the military was 9/11, which happened my senior year.
Of high school?
Of high school. But in my family, there was no other choice to make than to go straight to college. So I went to college, I got an engineering degree, and I wish it was 9/11 that I could say, that happened and I went. Unfortunately, I owe the credit to Kevin Costner and Ashton Kutcher in the movie The Guardian.
Are you being serious?
I'm being serious. It's so That's sad.
Awesome. There's nothing sad about that.
But that is true. I was watching in 2006. I was watching the fall of Iraq. I was watching the statue of Saddam Hussein being pulled down in my dorm room, fixed to the TV, and seeing the people around me had zero impact on them. And I was just burning with a desire to do something more and to be a part of that and to be of use to my country like my parents were. So it just so happened that I went and saw that movie, and I was like, I want to do something like that.
Dude, where's my hero? That's the movie. That's Ashton Kutcher's going to come back and do a movie about you. He's going to play you. No way, Ashton Kutcher once again
Kutcher.
Strikes. And
Kevin Costner.
So you go back and you walk us through the experience of enlisting in the Air Force and the process where you literally have it in your blood.
I had to make a call to the recruiter. The recruiter happened to be a prior combat controller, and I called him and I told him I wanted to be a pararescueman in the Air Force, which is basically the exact same thing that those divers in the Coast Guard in that movie, The Guardian, were doing.
By the way, like most of us watching this, I've never watched the movie The Guardian, but
now you will.
I'm gonna go. You've given it enough plug. I love Kevin Costner, and I secretly love Ashton Kutcher.
Yep.
So they were.
We all do.
Yeah, they were.
So I made the call to the recruiter. He happened to be a prior combat controller. I told him what he wanted to do, and he said, "You don't want to do that. You want to be a combat controller." So I told my parents I was going to be a combat controller, and they basically talked me out of that. And I enlisted to be an explosive ordnance disposal technician, right? EOD, bomb squad. So I go to basic training, and I finish basic training. I start EOD school, and on the 7th day, you graduate and you go to Florida for the next phase of school. But on the 5th day, you have a test. And I go out to complete this field exercise test, and I fail it once. If you fail it twice, you're kicked out of that career field, and you have to do something else. I went out and took the test again and failed it again. So now I go up into the office, and they ask me, what do you want to do now? You can choose another volunteer career field, like special operations, or you could be needs of the Air Force, which would be, I could be a cook, or I could be at the gate, waving people in and checking IDs. And I told them I wanted to be a combat controller, and they laughed at me because it's highly uncommon for you to fail out of EOD and become the tip of the spear as a combat controller. And I went to the schoolhouse, met the people there, and never looked back. It's been one of the best decisions and examples of failing for good.
I love that. What was it like going to combat for the first time?
Combat for the first time.
How long from the time you enlisted?
From the time I started the combat control pipeline, we go through 2 years of school. So there's a 90% attrition rate. So 36 guys, 4 guys make it out the other end. And then another year of training before we're deployable.
Well, but even with that, maybe like the whole theme of this thing is, again, like just staying true to yourself. What did you learn by being a good statistic, where you had all these people essentially quit?
I saw all these reps of people that thought they knew what they wanted to do. They thought they knew who they were and what they were fighting for. And they learned in the pool that this is not what they want. This is not what they're not willing to put.
You're saying the literal
lives
pool?
On the line. The literal pool, yeah. As a combat controller and most special operations jobs, we have to train in the pool. So we're doing a lot of things underwater without air, and your job is to not quit, not give up. So I've met the wizard a couple times. My mom hates that, but basically you're completing a task underwater.
Who's the wizard?
And you go until failure. So, an underwater.
Who's the wizard?
The wizard is, you remember old TVs? You're not that old, but you turn an old TV off and it goes pew.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it's like to meet the wizard.
Really?
It's called a shallow water blackout, and your body shuts down from lack of oxygen, but all your organs are good to go. They're just ready for you to be brought back to the surface. So the instructors are watching this.
That's called meeting the wizard?
Yeah. So you meet the wizard, the instructor goes in, pulls you up, and as soon as your mouth breaks the surface of the water, you'll take a breath. It's unbelievable.
I don't ever want to meet the wizard.
No, you don't.
Yeah. So you go to combat, and I mean, what was, obviously we've all seen movies and we've got friends probably, but not to the degree that you've been. But
right.
What was the prep for that?
The prep is just that. It's getting those repetitions of seeing just exactly what your body is capable of, what your mind is capable of, right? Mind over matter, and knowing that, if you're intentional about what you're doing, you can accomplish anything. It may not happen the way you wanted it to or thought it would, but you surround yourself with the right people, and you're intentional about your craft and what you're providing to the battlefield, and you just got to go for it. So my first deployment was in 2010, and I wasn't supposed to go where I went. I went to do a combat search and rescue role, which is kind of a sideline job.
Where were you?
Northern Afghanistan.
Wow. And
I was supposed to go to a different part of Afghanistan, but I had to replace a teammate of mine who got injured. He just cut his hand, small cut on his hand, but because of that, he couldn't deploy at that time. So I had to rush, and in a day, I had to go to North Carolina and then fly out in his stead. And he went and took my deployment. My deployment was to sit and stand ready on watch. I'm basically like a firefighter, but watching like the Jason Bourne room, all the TV screens, so you're watching the battlefield taking place live. So I've watched loss of friendly and enemy lives live, and listening to all that radio chatter, just standing by and waiting and praying that nothing happens, but knowing that I have to be ready in case something does happen so that I can go and take their place. So I would load a helicopter that had rotors turning with a small group of people, and we would fly to that location, and I would take over the scheme of maneuvers if I was called to do so. So it's kind of like, the Rudy Rudiger sitting on the sideline of the last game and then getting tapped, saying to go, and you rushing in, and then,
Except he was trying to sack the quarterback, and you're trying to go and make sure you don't get killed.
Yeah, exactly. So that was my first deployment. And 3 months into that, September 16th, which is coming up this week, Danny Sanchez, who was the airman who cut his hand that I replaced, he was killed in combat. So I took his deployment, and again, he took mine. So I was supposed to be where he was. And so that was pretty difficult. And I tell people that my first deployment was very tame, but it brought the battlefield home to my parents. My parents went to El Paso, went to his funeral in my stead. Get back home, and 13 days later, my best friend, Mark Forrester, was killed in combat as well. So, in a matter of...
This is in northern Afghanistan?
Different parts of Afghanistan. Mark was in Cobra, which at the time was a hot place, 2010. And so lost two of my best friends. My deployment was very anticlimactic, other than being fueled with a lot of fresh perspective and motivation to get back to the fight to contribute. So I came home. I was home for 6 months.
Home, like
home.
America.
Yep. After my deployment was done, I came home and spent time with both of their families, and then redeployed in 2011 to my second deployment. And that time,
what does that mean? Are you called to go do that, or do you feel
so
called
we
to
have
go?
as a special operator, we're going to combat, right? It was an active combat zone, so we're going. The Army has, pretty much the military has a 1-to-1 dwell ratio. Army might be gone for 1 year and home for a year. And the Air Force, we're gone for 6 months, home for 6 months, and repeat. Right? So I was gone for 6 months, came home, did all my currency, training, upgrades, and then you're ready to go again.
When you're over there, is there any mental break for 6 months, or is it just?
It's actually, and this is something that you wouldn't anticipate, but it is so much more relaxing and calm and mental clarity in a combat zone than it is driving around Dallas traffic.
I trust you. I'm not. Yeah.
We're not worried about going to the grocery store. After I get off work, I'm not worried about paying any bills. I'm not. I'm not sitting in traffic. I'm just focusing on my role, my team, and what we're here to do. We may not have a mission every single day, and when we don't, we're relaxing.
You have one
calming,
job.
Getting ready for the job.
Do you have?
And
are you able to
that
talk to your
speaks,
family and stuff?
Yes, exactly. My next point. That speaks a lot to the value and the impact of military spouses, military families, and military children, because they're absorbing all of that stress at home while you're fighting for, the absorption of the stress of an entire country.
Yeah, no pressure. So deployment number 2.
Deployment number 2 was the deployment I was looking forward to. I was on an ODA, which is an Army Special Forces team, and we were doing village stability operations. So my job was to train and equip Afghan local police officers so that they could defend their country whenever America would eventually pull out of the war. So that's weapons and training, fighting tactics, giving them uniforms, paying them, giving them a schedule, helping them set up their barricades, right? We're facilitators in their war, and if something happens, we're there to support them. So I was only on the team for a short amount of time, and it's incredibly important that I gel with my teammates, because I'm a new entity coming onto an old team. I have to have a personality and the ability to integrate with that team quickly so that there's no friction, right? So in a short amount of time, I become one with them, and our job is to respond to anything that we get reports of.
Can I ask a dumb question? Do you have like a nickname, or do you just go by like Sergeant Yellock?
So we have call signs.
Yeah, call signs.
Yeah, we have call signs, and every combat controller's call sign is the same. We just have a different number based on what part of the country we're in.
So it wasn't like a nickname.
No.
What was your
Jaguar though?
Seriously?
Yeah.
Well, that's a nickname.
Yeah, Jaguar.
That's. I mean, obviously they got Top Gun 2 just came out. And
yeah.
So you were Jaguar?
Yes.
Did you get to pick that?
Jag 40.
Did you get to pick it?
No, all combat controllers. So that if you imagine.
So was there any other Jaguar, or is it just you?
On the team, just me.
But
so
what were the other
only
names?
Only one combat controller on every team.
But you were the only Jaguar.
I have a call sign.
What was that?
Of Jag 40.
Whoa.
Because a combat controller has 2 inter-team radios on my chest and a big one on my back, so that I can communicate with satellites. I can talk to the stock or the operations center back at headquarters of the big base, and I can also communicate with all my teammates, and I can communicate with the aircraft flying overhead in a combat zone. So
all
I
from
need to have a call
40.
sign. Yeah.
Jag 40.
So if we get into troops in contact or start taking enemy contact, and I call for an aircraft, whenever they check on, that's how they know who I am. And different people that talk to aircraft in a combat zone have different call signs. So if an aircraft checked on and heard Jaguar, there's a certain reputation assessed with that call sign, so they know who they're talking to. They know the type of person that's on the ground, and there's a lot of trust that we've built over the course of a 20-year war, that they have the confidence that the information that I give them is going to be accurate, succinct, and timely, and give them the confidence to drop bombs close to friendly personnel.
So you inherited Jaguar.
Yes.
What would be if we're filming a movie, and let's say for random instance I'm Healywood. What's the call sign in the movie? It's not Jaguar because other people have had Jaguar, and I'm sure you've thought of this, but this is the one question I was most excited to ask.
That cannot be true.
What's your call sign?
We don't have. I mean, I don't have a call sign.
Come on, you do.
I mean, I have ops initials, and I have a.
What's your theme song?
I love, my favorite song is Genesis, Land of Confusion.
Oh, it's a great music video too, with a lot of weird puppets.
A lot of weird stuff.
Yeah, but I can appreciate that. Phil Collins, a genius. What's your call sign? Please. Come on, Jaguar 40, Jag 40. What is it?
It's going to have to come on a podcast 2.0.
Okay, we'll be there. We'll get back. Okay, so
you determine the call sign at the end of the podcast.
No, I can't. That's the thing with nicknames. Is the only rule with nicknames you can't come up with your own.
You think that Goose chose Goose?
Well,
he
Jerry
did not choose to be
Bruckheimer.
called
Jerry
Goose.
Bruckheimer probably chose it, and the screenwriter. But Jaguar would have been cool until I figured out you didn't choose Jaguar.
I did not.
Yours needs to be like a Pretty Boy. That'd be a cool one. Oh, Pretty Boy's here, and he's just. Or
when I was going through
Gorgeous
training,
George.
There was a popular song. I think it was a T-Pain song, but it faded out.
I'm in love with a stripper.
It faded out with Nappy Boy and Pretty Boy. And at the time, I had a little bit of a fro, and my friend was much better looking than me, so I would always be Nappy Boy and Pretty Boy.
There we go. And for the first time, we all heard this. Nappy Boy. Yeah. Nappy Boy Jag 40.
I'll take it.
Okay, so all hell broke loose on this mission. And I
was
wanted...
on my 7th day in country, and... we were we were just driving further than we had gone before in the 6 days prior. And again, our job is to go and check on checkpoints, make sure they have what they need. So we were actually going to a village called Johnnie Yellow, which was to our south. And we loaded up on the trucks and head out. We're in a 3-vehicle convoy of up-armored vehicles. I'm in the second vehicle with a team leader in the passenger seat. And my job as a CCT or combat controller is to be in the back of the truck, the open area, so that I have my Falcon view on my computer, which is tracking like GPS, so I can see where my coordinates are at all times. And I have what's called a pocket laser rangefinder. So imagine you're golfing. You don't golf, but they golf. You have a rangefinder, and I can shoot a flag stick. We'll stick with the golf analogy. But I can shoot a ridgeline, and it tells me the distance. Well, on my GPS, it shows me the coordinates for that position. So then I can then relay those coordinates to a pilot should we take contact from that ridgeline. In 5 minutes, I've already annotated that as a possible point of origin so that when the pilot comes on and we're taking contact and I've got my head down, I can relay this coordinate to the pilot.
This all falls on you.
Yes.
Yeah, so, I mean, headspace for that. I mean, how did you not let the craziness drown out what your job was, what your mission was?
You have to... It's an immense amount of trust that every single one of us is just as important as the next. And that's ultimately everything that I'm about, right? Is that, yeah, I worked for 4 years to get to the point I was, to be the tip of the spear so that I could be the one that calls on the radio to, take all the noise and make it silent and make sure that all my teammates could get out of a hot area safely. But every single one of the people on the teams, whether their job is medical or, explosive ordnance disposal, or the team leader, the team sergeant, weapons, right? They all have a role that they are incredibly proficient at. Mine just so happens to have to be on all the time. So there's calm in knowing that I haven't turned it off, which sounds like an oxymoron, but it's actually calming knowing that I've done everything I can, and I'm not going to take a moment for granted, because that moment could be the difference between life and death.
For not just you, for everybody.
For everybody.
So you're a responsibility guy.
So we start picking up inter-team communication from enemy radio traffic, and my interpreter is in the back of the vehicle with me as well. And we are going through a dried riverbed, or a wadi. And the first vehicle goes through and up and out the other side in a defensive posture. And then our vehicle starts to go through. The ICOM chatter says that the enemy are watching us. They're counting our vehicles. They're wondering if we're going to get out of the vehicle.
In the middle of the night?
Middle of the day. It was probably 10 a.m. when this happened. And my interpreter, again, is telling me these things. He's interpreting the posture on the radio, and I'm relaying it through my radio to the team inside. So everybody knows what's going on. We don't see any activity anywhere. There's a small village about 300 meters to our southeast, and as our vehicle starts to come up and out the other side of this large wadi, I place my hands up on top of the turret and lean back into my heels because it's pretty steep coming out the other side, and that's when the IED went off underneath the rear axle of the vehicle I was riding in, disabling the vehicle. And when I opened my eyes, I had been flipped up on top of the turret and facing the other direction. I could see nothing but the orange dust and haze from the displaced earth, and I could smell and taste the chemical noxious taste of the homemade explosive device that had went off. I knew instantly exactly what had happened, and as I started to right the ship and sit up, I put my helmet back on and put my peltors, which are the headsets and radio that I can communicate with, put my headset back on. I had a laceration on my throat from my helmet chin strap, and I looked down and I could see the bottoms of both of my feet looking up at me, and I was losing blood into the cabin. Enzo, my interpreter, was unconscious in the floorboard, and I grabbed my weapon and started to scan that village because I was expecting enemy activity to follow on, but
meaning
nothing.
People are about to come at you to try to kill you.
Right, that's the tactic, and that's what we trained for. That they're going to disable a vehicle, and then they're going to attack. That's going to be the initiator. So tax dollars take into effect, and I grab my weapon and start scanning the village. I start communicating to the team leader that I don't see any activity in the village. Enzo has a broken leg, and I've got 2 broken legs, and I need a medic.
Is it just you that? Are you the only one that's conscious?
Luckily, the vehicles are phenomenal, and I actually changed the TTPs, or tactics, techniques, and procedures for all combat controllers that we're not allowed to ride in the back of trucks anymore because everybody inside was fine. The vehicles are built to withstand these blasts.
What do you call this day? Is there a day that you refer to it as?
So from henceforth, that day is called my Alive Day.
Alive Day.
Because I was blessed to have woken up and to be set on a new path that I'm still walking down today.
I just got chills. I'm literally walking down, and I want to make sure we're painting this picture too, where people can, as much as you want to share, within reason.
Yeah.
What was the next few hours like? I mean, what did you do to actually go and make this Alive Day something that wasn't the day that you met Jesus yet?
Right.
Maybe you just met the wizard.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it wasn't for long. Like I said, I was probably it was like I blinked, and it was the loudest noise that I'd ever heard, and I could, if I close my eyes, I can replay the noise. And for the next several weeks, actually, any time that I did close my eyes or fall asleep in the hospital, I would hear that noise and I'd be woken up. And but the process was, the medic made it to the truck. They start working on both of us. They patch up both my legs. I had to be the one to put 2 tourniquets on one of my legs myself. My medic put on another one. About 15 minutes after the blast, and the medics have been working on us, patching us up to get us exfilled, which came an hour later. The second medic said, "Do you want any morphine?" I was like, "Yes." What the heck?
Yeah.
Why are you just now offering me pain meds? I hadn't even thought of that. Didn't even cross my mind. But I was talking just like I'm talking to you now. I was able to be calm. It's not like it is in the movies.
Were you in shock, you think?
I had lost a lot of blood. I knew because of the training what shock was, but probably.
What a badass.
I don't believe I was in shock, but
I stepped on a pine cone 2 weeks ago at my in-laws' lake house, and I literally was screaming and crying. I went inside and woke my wife up, and I was like, I might need to go to the doctor. I'm not joking, because I stepped on a pine cone. So there's a reason that people like you are real heroes, and there's a reason that I'm a realtor and a podcast host.
Yeah.
Walk us through the recovery. And again, this is just the theme of why I wanted to do this, and just introduce you all to these incredible people I have in my life. But what an extreme version of a badass, where I'm going to just kind of give you all some breakaways. And Johnny, some of the stuff he's done in the last few years. So mind you, this is post-recovery.
And that was 2011.
2011. And the recovery process, 33 surgeries, is that right?
I've had 32 limb salvage surgeries on both my legs to keep my legs. God. So at that time, surgeons were getting a lot of repetitions of just lopping off limbs because everyone was having the same type of injuries. There are no better advances.
Is lopping off limbs fancy for amputation?
Yep.
Okay.
And we can say that. You probably wouldn't want to say that, but there's no better time in the medical field, especially in orthopedics, to learn and progress than war.
I thought you were going to say job security.
Well, it is good job security. Yeah. And things have slowed down, so they've had to reorganize. But there were so many of these that the gentleman that I found myself being worked on by, my surgeon, my physical therapist, and my prosthetist, had all created a process of limb salvage to be able to get me to where I am today. And today, I spent 3 years then, 32 surgeries to keep my legs and my ankles are fused, so my feet will never move again, but I wear braces which allow me to do everything like you mentioned earlier. So I can still skydive, and I ran the Dallas Half Marathon last year.
Of course you did.
I don't recommend anybody run, though. Silly. Even y'all with good ankles, I don't recommend it. We don't do it right.
Yeah.
Do you run?
Not well. Not far.
Yeah,
no,
not well.
No, if you want to call it run, I was like, yeah, I run away from a lot of things, like my feelings. So, again, obviously, I think people that are watching this are going to be just kind of shook at the fact that you have this spirit of you that I know Jesus is the center of your life, but a lot of people just quit. And I think that's a theme that you and I will run across with, what you're doing now in the mortgage industry, and as an entrepreneur, you're going to see people that just don't have it in them. It's one thing to quit real estate or to power through in the life of a salesperson, but 32 surgeries, right? You're getting there. You can't see your legs. You can't feel your legs. I mean, this is a very cliche horror story, but for real, where most people choose the path of resistance, of just like, I can't, at least resistance. I can't. I'm just going to quit. My life is not going to have meaning moving forward. But you did the exact opposite.
I was blessed to, like I started with that pipeline, that attrition process, getting all these reps at failing, but for a purpose, and recognizing that
without knowing you were going to have this kind of, I don't know if you want to call it a failure, but
exactly,
you did it because that's what you're trained to do.
Right. You just keep going. People ask, that question, how did you not get down on yourself? And for me, it has always been, well, it's never been about why me, but what's next. Right. So on the battlefield, I was never looking at my legs and thinking, oh no, I'm never going to be able to do this again, or I'm never going to do this again, or I'm going to lose my legs. Legitimately never crossed my mind. It was only about, how do I get myself out of this position so that my team can move on safely without me? I never thought about what that process was going to look like. But I was blessed to had done the diligence in my life up to that point, to have the right people in my circle, the best network possible, the faith that I was grounded in to go to combat and be willing to die, to be able to support me and lift me up, and to show me what it meant to go from being the tip of the spear to being now introduced to everybody else in my life that made up the rest of that spear.
Do you even consider what happened to you a tragedy?
Absolutely not. I consider it the best thing that ever happened to me now.
That's crazy.
It's the best thing that ever happened to me. One of your other podcast guests said that, he would say that getting knocked out in that first fight was the best thing that ever happened to him.
Yeah.
As he realized he'd probably be a better manager than a boxer.
Yeah, he probably has his wits to him, too.
There's a turning point. There's something that happens, something big, and a lot of us are different levels of stubbornness, right? So sometimes it doesn't have to be big. Sometimes it could be as subtle as, where's my Snapple? right?
Golly, where is my Snapple?
I'm referencing prior podcasts, right?
Look
But
at that. This guy's
you had an investor that
Yeah.
that loved Snapple. Snapple wasn't there, and he realized that it's probably a good time to short that stock, and it was a great move. But for me, I was stubborn and hard-headed enough that it took an explosion in Afghanistan to put my life firmly on the path that I'm supposed to be on now.
Something tells me you still would have figured it out, but that gave you a different platform where you can go and help people, which leads me into my next question. You take this opportunity, not a tragedy, this blessing, not even a blessing in disguise, it was a blessing, and you want to go and help people through it. And obviously speaking to tens of thousands of people. I know you've done stuff like this hundreds of times. I've seen you speak without knowing you were the keynote multiple times, but what was that trigger? Maybe as an entrepreneur, as a business person, how did you go and actually take the brand you had now, serving in the Air Force, and turn it into charitable outreach? What did that look like?
I'm doing the exact same thing. I'm wearing a different uniform, right? My commitment to service, like I started with my parents, and them demonstrating what it meant to put others before yourself, put your country before yourself. I'm just doing that now, wearing skinny jeans,
Are those? Thank you for not having holes in them. At least, yeah. And
yeah, I definitely don't have holes in my jeans.
Spoken like a true 38-year-old.
Exactly.
I don't know if they call them skinny jeans anymore.
Well, I'm just,
At least they fit. I have one pair of pants that fit, and they're about 8 inches too short. So
maybe skinny jeans would be selling out.
Yeah, we're not here.
I don't want to sell out.
Yeah, those are. He's wearing baggy jeans.
I do have holes in my jeans,
but you didn't buy them.
I earned these holes because my braces are carbon fiber and they eat through the jeans.
Same.
But I had a turning point in my life where I had to make the decision to get out of the military. That's a difficult phone call from my commander. What do you want to do? We're going to fight to keep you in the military if that's what you want to do, or you can be medically retired and figure out something else. And I talked about that with my friends and family and made the decision that if I couldn't do everything in the military, I didn't want to do anything in the military. And I knew that God would find something else for me to lean into. And immediately when I retired, I started working for nonprofits and pouring back into the same people that I was working alongside that were being wounded in combat as well, helping building specially adapted homes, and just...
What about Boots for Warriors? What tell us about Boots for Warriors?
And then putting custom fit cowboy boots on their feet.
Did you
or
say
their prosthesis.
Custom fit cowboy boots?
I did,
you
yeah.
Just...
Yeah, I don't mind throwing a little bit of twang in there, every time.
I like that. That's real nice. That's the Netherlands in you.
That is.
Yeah, it's the most I guess Dutch. Yeah,
Dutch.
I almost said Netherlandish, but nope, not.
You did say it.
Yeah, that's why my parents held me back on the drive to Dallas.
It's obvious.
Yeah, still probably should get held back. But again, the mindset, man, the perspective that you've got, I mean, this obviously has to be grounded in something from, your faith and your family. But did you ever reach a point where you considered just being, just thrown in the towel, right?
No. I don't even have a towel. Do you have a towel?
I'm a sweater.
Yeah.
This is a sweater, but no, I get it.
No,
but I'm saying it's such a rare thing.
It is a cliche to say never quit, right? But,
yeah.
No, I can't quit. I've got big goals, and you can't quit if you have big goals, because as soon as let's say you achieve it, that goal is always going to be evolving into something else. There's always going to be something that you're still looking for. So for me, I thrive on finishing things, right? So I have to set small goals so that I can finish things and get enough reps at being successful in finishing things.
Like breakfast.
Yeah. You talk about service. I know this podcast is ultimately about, selling without selling out, and the business world. How does what I did on the battlefield apply to business world? And it's just that. It's that I cared enough about other people to put myself in harm's way, in the same way that I care enough about my mortgage clients enough to stay up late at night or wake up early to crank out something that they need to help them make one of the biggest decisions of their lives. So I'm wearing a different uniform, but I'm still doing the same amount of service and keeping American people safe.
Do you wear a name tag for the mortgage?
No.
Okay, good. I was gonna say you can wear a uniform, but like I don't know if Nappy Boy on the name tag for the mortgage industry would. Maybe it would translate. Who knows?
Who knows these days? I'm sure I could go viral on a TikTok and.
Yeah. See, again, spoken like a guy that says, I'm sure I could go viral on a TikTok.
Exactly.
There's Nappy Boy Jag 40.
I heard it on the radio on the way in.
Really?
I thought I'd try to.
The AM radio? Yeah. What do you feel like your gift is to share with people? I mean, what's the advice out of all these experiences you've had, and the most important worldly experience you're about to have with Brittany, becoming a husband, and then hopefully having a family and all that stuff that you're gonna, be rewarded with, which you so much deserve. But what's the takeaway? I know you speak to masses of people, from young children to old people like me, but what do you want to leave people with?
You never give up, right? I mean, this life is, you have no idea how many of these days you're going to get, right? So don't take any of them for granted. And what I always tell crowds is, I'm only this image of success that you see today because of the people that I've chosen to surround myself with. So be intentional about the people that you spend the most amount of time with in your life. I think even that's a cliche. I'm sure a lot of people would say that. That's nothing new, but
no, but say it again.
I know for a fact I would have crumbled had I not had the people in my life. And one of your questions that I don't think we got to was, what was one of the hardest things of the recovery process? It was not the physical stuff. It was never the physical stuff. They got drugs for that, right? I had methadone on an IV, right? 32 surgeries and doing rehab throughout, right? So taking mangled limbs with external fixators and now walking on a treadmill with it. God. And bleeding and right. But
the hardest part.
The hardest part is, the mental stuff, right? The emotional stuff. Me and my family, we struggled a lot with that. We don't have, everything's not perfect. And then whenever you take a catastrophe or a trauma in your life, you throw everybody into one room, it can get kind of nasty and get kind of difficult.
Yeah.
And we did not do that well, but I can tell you today that we're better for it, right? Yeah. We're a much closer family. But I had incredible, my faith, my family, and my friends that were there. They swarmed on me and made it possible to be the man I am today. So if I were to give any advice, it would be to be intentional about the people that you choose to surround yourself with.
Because you're a product of them.
Yes.
And I think that especially in the world that you're in now with doing mortgages in Texas, and, sometimes you just have to fight through different kind of mud and muck. And not that I fight through stuff that is not pleasant, right? And I found that if I take negativity home, it has an effect on my wife and our daughter, and that's on me, and I think just pivoting throughout the course of the day with real friendships,
right,
and finding people that you actually want to be around. So that's the advice, is to be intentional and to be selective with who you spend your time with.
If you have these friends like you and talking about what you're going through right now, I'm going to be going through that in 2 years.
Yeah.
Right? You're going through it for a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
The purpose is to turn around and be able to help those other people in your network.
Most people don't understand that.
Most people
give up. Most people don't have your fortitude, dude, and that's why your gift. That's why it's so exciting. All these people are going to hear this and watch this. Is that they need to hear it? And for people like you and me, within reason for me, it's a decision. You make a decision to make the best out of things, and you can't give up. And you've got to listen to multiple songs and sermons, and you got to live like you're dying, because you just never know.
That is one of the best things of living a life where I got used to seeing my friends die. And now being so close with all these Gold Star families all over the country. I've spent Thanksgiving with Mark Forrester's family for the past 11 years straight.
No way.
And I am committed to living a life that honors their willingness to sacrifice for so many people that they never knew.
I love it. You're a selfless, intentional, just incredible man. And before we forget, the most important plug we needed to give is not to your mortgage company. It's to the future Mrs. Nappy Boy.
Exactly. She will never be called that.
Mrs. Nappy Boy?
No, it's not going to happen.
Mrs. Yellock?
Mrs. Yellock. That's got a nice ring to it.
Okay. Are you... This is a real question that you're not prepared for, and it's not on our cheat sheet. Are you more nervous about your wedding day than you were about being deployed?
I would say... Actually, I haven't been asked that before, But I would say it's very similar.
It is.
Preparing for what we're about to do is very similar than preparing for a deployment.
Do you feel like it's going to be harder?
The marriage or the wedding?
Both?
I think marriage is meant to be hard. Anything worth doing is going to be difficult, right?
Yeah. It's the best kind of hard ever.
But through faith and commitment to one another, I think that, well, I know that we'll have more highs than lows, and you'll be
the best husband ever.
It'll be awesome. I look forward to being a husband, and I know that she's looking forward to. I mean, I'm blown away that she's trying to hitch her wagon to me.
Just hurry. I know.
Let's
same.
get it done.
Just do it.
I
kept
was not
asking
planning
Abby,
a long engagement. I'm surprised she's still sticking around. But
okay, well, just don't
incredibly blessed.
Just don't jinx it. On podcast 2.0, when we talk about the evolution of Nappy Boy, you'll have a wedding ring on and talk about how the hardest day of your life and the best day of your life is behind you. So
yes,
thank you for being a friend and for being a hero and for your selflessness and your perspective and for giving us the gift of you got it all, man. You've leveraged your brand more than anyone I've probably ever met, and I know it's only the tip of the iceberg in the business world as well. Last question: how do we support you? Where do we find you? And your skinny jeans.
You don't want the jeans, but I do work for Go Prime Mortgage. You can find me online at goprimewithjohnny.com, and also on Instagram and Facebook, Johnnie Yellock II.
Yellock.
And the second. I got a dad out there who's the first.
I like that.
We share different content.
But you have the same passion for cars.
Yes, that's true.
Johnny's not a Porsche guy, Porsche.
Yes.
You learn that when you're around car people. Well, thanks for being on the
work.
Thank you very much. Porsche.
Thank you for doing this. This is incredible.
Were you about to say thank you for your service?
No, thank you for doing this.
I was about to cry. I was like, you're welcome. This is my contribution back to the world is a podcast. But this is why I decided to do this, is for people like Johnny to have a platform that is widespread, and it gives you guys all it's simple, right? I think it's so simple. It's so simple, but it's so hard for so many people.
Chat.
When you are faced with adversity, punch it in the freaking face and move on. And you've done that. So thank you for your service, for your friendship, and for giving us all a reason to smile today.
I'm Johnnie Yellock, and this is how you sell without selling out. Roger's that.